All right, Okunini, good morning.
Jamatio.
Bejoso. I don't know where people are, mammy. One about Bishasu.
Ay, miana, media homo.
Aha. Well,
Pinchinem.
people are no, Abishasu. Aha.
No, I'm.
Me papa would you say me the way me papa.
Miana.
I can't mind so papa and I were my yes, sir.
Ampa. Mediatum.
It's a point, Mama Kalase, and then you may know come once.
Yeah, you better be a maupa.
Could you more mommy? Anyway, once again, I greet all of you listening right now. This morning, we are looking at the concept of the opposite in the African perspective or African context versus the European concept. The Africans used to see the opposite, the concept of the opposite, as complementary. The African didn't see one being evil and one being good, while the Europeans see one to be good and bad. And this is what we are going to have Dr. Abadeleka will help us discuss into details. Doc, so this is what we are talking about today.
Right. Yeah, so we'll go over several things today. One, ideas of good and evil, freedom, destiny, and moral responsibility, concepts of truth, order, and stability, and then personification of chaos and uncertainty in African myth. And we find there's a very good book that I always recommend called Person, Divinity, and Nature, which is a follow-up to another book called Foundations of African Thought, both by one of our greatest thinkers over the last century, in my personal opinion, Dr. Chukwunyere Kamalu. A lot of people don't know his work, but he is really excellent at showing the foundations of African thought, just as the book title says, where he shows us how do African people think, and he gives examples. It's not just, oh, let me give you an interpretation. He'll show you this creation story, he'll show you this myth, he'll show you these ideas, so you can really get a sense of that. So a lot of the things we're discussing are coming from that. Okay. So a lot of the things that we'll be discussing are actually coming from that book, Person, Divinity, and Nature. Dealing with destiny and free will, and seeing these as complements. It seems paradoxical that you can have a destiny, but then at the same time you have a free will to choose whether or not to follow your destiny. But again, this is something that we find in African thought. It's a paradox, but not a contradiction.
Okay.
Also, the idea that the human is free to choose between that path and this path or that path, whether we want to call that good or evil. And also the idea that nothing exists by itself, that there is an interrelation. There's a proverb in Chi that they say, and it translates to, if you touch one part of the anansi, the spider web, then it shakes the whole edifice. And this is the idea that things have interrelations between them. One action will cause, a reaction.
A ripple effect.
Exactly, throughout. And this is again what you have in this proverb and in African thought in general. There's the idea that the human is not necessarily inherently good or inherently evil as other things, but again that it's a dynamic view of good and evil in relation to human actions, as opposed to defining human beings in their essence. Now, when you look at Eurasian thought, there's this idea of original sin, that the human being is evil, essentially evil because of this original sin, and someone has to come and save you from your sins. It's a very Eurasian type of thing. In African thought, the human being isn't seen as being essentially evil. Rather, the actions that a person can do can be classified as such or classified as good. And, even we had a discussion about African spiritual systems, and we were talking about how it's like a knife. So if I ask you, is a knife good or is a knife evil? Well, it depends on what actions are you using the knife for. So if I'm using the knife to cut up fruit in order so you can get, healthy and so forth and so on, then you would say, okay, the knife is good. Well, now if I'm using that exact same knife now to cut you, now you'll say, all right, this is not a good knife. But the knife itself, you can look at it as an instrument, as a tool. Someone, I always have been using this analogy. Someone told me that there's actually a documentary by the exact same name where he gives this exact same analogy like a knife, and I recently got a chance to check it out.
And I think that the examples are endless. The gun,
exactly,
everything, even the food we eat. you can overeat and kill yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So does that make the food evil?
Exactly. So, this is a major question because even when we're talking about a gun, this is something that you would think, okay, this is built to destroy. It's not like a knife. All right, a knife, you can use it to cut. But okay, you can use this exact same gun to defend your family. Then you can use that gun to go out and decide to, I'm going to commit murder. But again, whatever the instrument is, whatever the tool is, and even your life, you can look at your life in the same way. What am I going to use my life for? All right, there's this analogy they talk about. All right, on your tombstone, you have the day you were born, or the date you were born, and the date that you die. But the dash in between, that's what are you going to use that dash in between for? Between this date and that date. So these are some of the things that we can think of, especially when we're talking about morals and relationships. And again, we're looking at how in the African worldview, no person is seen as good or evil in himself, but only in terms of the relations to other people. So in the area of moral responsibility, it means that it's a collective rather than an individual affair. So it's not just, okay, you yourself, you are evil, or you yourself, you are good. How are you interacting with other people? You understand? If you're interacting in a way that upholds truth, all right, people may not even like the fact that you are saying the truth to them. However, you have to stand on what is truth, what is ma'at, in the face of perhaps someone is speaking eloquently or whatever, but they're lying. So, these are the things in terms of the relationships. It's not always going to be something that seems harmonious, but always we're looking to strive towards the truth, looking to strive towards ma'at, living life ethically and morally so that you can become an ancestor whose name is called. So again, what we're looking at is individual actions have consequences for others as well as oneself. So again, we're talking about this web of relationships. And then we're also looking at order and chaos as complements. Now you may look at like, okay, order is good and therefore chaos is evil. That's not necessarily the case because you can look at mythical accounts of the so-called trickster characters in African mythology, like Ogo amongst the Dogon, Ishu or Ijakpa amongst the Yoruba, Legba amongst the Fon, Musuwo amongst the Mende, Anansi amongst the Akan, also Sasa Bonsam, as we've discussed, amongst the Akan, Sech amongst the people of ancient Kemet. And in this is the idea that what we're calling chaotic may inadvertently lead to an enrichment and good fortune in the community. So we'll look at Sech, for example. So Sech killed up his brother Asar, chopped his body up into pieces. You would say that's a very bad thing. That's a very bad action. But this exact same person, Sech, is not seen as Satan, is not seen as Lucifer, who's all evil, because by the same token, he's the one who rides on the solar bark and protects Ra from Ipepi, the snake, who tries to swallow Ra, every day. So again, this character who we would say, all right, he just did something that was very evil. He's not seen as being inherently evil in ancient Kemet. I was just looking at the coffin text this morning as I was on my way here. And in the coffin text, it talks about Horus is standing behind me. Seth is standing behind me. If you look at all these statues, you have Heru and Seth on one side and the other side. They're contenders. They're both trying to see who's going to get the throne of Asar, the father. Now, in this, Seth is painted as the one who is usurping the throne, and then Heru is the one who is the rightful heir.
Yeah.
But in all these statues, you see both of them on either side of the ruler saying that they've come together in order to move the nation forward.
So someone is asking, when do in Africa, the African concept of the opposites, when do we say that? Because we definitely we can say this art is evil.
Yeah.
We
So it's
can
based.
say
So
that.
it's based on the action rather than are you yourself as a human being. Because the thing is, even if you do something that is seen as a transgression, like they have something called bragro.
Yeah.
So before bragro, you're not supposed to have any type of relation with the woman. If you do,
Or
then
the
both
man.
of you, or the man. So between a man and woman, because bragro is specifically for young ladies. Now, if you do it, it's called chiribra, that you have despised life. So if a young couple, get the young girl pregnant, then before she's going through these rites, then they would be banished. They would be put out into the woods. But then later on, there's a way for reintegrating them into the society.
Yeah.
So they say, "Nipa yentonchene, yenfantonchene." So the idea is that you don't throw the human being away, that even this person, they've done an action that we're saying is actually despising life. However, that doesn't mean that they are inherently seen as evil. that's the real concept. One of the foundations of Eurasian thought is the idea of inherent evil of human beings. Okay. So even when you look at the concept of what the human being is in Eurasian thought, when you say, "Oh, I'm only human," it means that you're fallible. You understand? It means that you make mistakes, that you do bad things, you're sinful, so forth. That's the core idea of what human being is in Eurasian thought, as opposed to African thought. And I say, "Oh, Oyenipa," you're saying that this person is compassionate, this person is generous, this person, has all of these types of qualities. So again, even though we may translate Onipa as human being, that the concepts behind them are vastly different. You understand? So we can look at the action and say this action is bad, this action is evil, if we want to use that terminology. But at the same time, it's not saying that the human being is evil.
So why would the Europeans say define human beings as somebody who is fallible, somebody who makes mistakes, and none of that?
Yeah, if you live in Europe and you live in a cave amongst all types of white people, then of course that's the conclusion that you'll reach, because everybody around you is doing all type of fallible, evil things. So it's based on their environment. If you live among African people, then that's why your core view is going to be that the human being is essentially good, or has a capacity for good, for evil, but the human is also perfectible. So if you look at ancient Kemet, they have this idea of mi ra.
What does that mean?
Like the sun. The idea is that a human being can be like the sun, can be perfectible. You understand? As opposed to the Eurasian concept that the human is inherently imperfect. You understand? So what we're looking at is that there's what's called the two cradle theory by Cheikh Anta Diop, and we actually just looked at the documentary on Cheikh Anta Diop this past Thursday at the film series, and he has what's called the two cradle theory, where he says the northern cradle is characterized by these concepts of alienation, that this idea of might makes right, only the strong survive, survival of the fittest. Because if you're in a cave and I'm the strongest one, then that means the little resources that are here, I can steal them from you. I can beat you with my club, and I can take your wife, rape her, do all these things. So the idea is whoever is strong, that's the one who's good. Whoever is weak, that's the one who's bad. So this is why you have in Eurasian thought, man is good, woman is evil, right? That's where you get an Adam and Eve story. You don't find those types of correlates in African thought. You have the idea that the creator, it has both masculine and feminine aspects. We've covered this before. Ata na nyongmo. Ata, father, na mother, nyongmo as the creator. Awurade Nyankopon, Maulisa. We can go through Amen, Amenet, or Amen and Mut. So you can go through African culture after African culture, and here's this idea of the creator having both of these aspects. So again, if you are in that northern cradle where there are very few resources, and even though Cheikh Anta Diop is credited with this theory, you can find this exact same idea in the instructions to Mary Carré. We're talking about 4,000 years ago, and it says, "Lo, the miserable Asiatic, he is wretched because of the place he's in." When we're saying Asiatic, we're talking about those from Eurasia. Europe and Asia are just one landmass. It says, "Lo, the miserable Asiatic, he is wretched because of the place he's in. Short of water and bare of wood. His paths are many and difficult because of mountains. That he is the one who snatches from a lonely road but cannot steal from a populous town. He is like a thief who darts about in the group. He is like a crocodile on the shore." So it gives all these things, but it's saying that look at the place they're in. They're short of water. They're, bare of wood. They don't have resources, and that's why they behave in the way that they behave. If you look at the prophecy of Nefertiti again, it talks about how they terrorize the hearts of those among the oxen, that they terrorize the hearts of those upon the plow, referring to farmers. It said they travel about with their strength. So again, all of these things are African people, black people, who are looking at why do these Eurasians behave the way they behave?
That is what I'm coming to. Does that explain why, like, from ancient up to date, everywhere they go, they want to grab resources? How extensive is or serious is their lack? I don't know how to put it. Like it looks like they lack things, right? They lack resources, but how serious is that?
Yeah, this is the thing. If we look at Eurasian thought in general, we can say that throughout their history, any place that they've gone, they've brought about destruction. And some of the best examples of that, if we can call them best, Tasmania, right? They went to Tasmania, people who had been living there. So Tasmania is an island right off of the coast of Australia,
okay,
right? So these Eurasians, what we refer to as these white Europeans, but again, Eurasia is just one landmass. They went to Tasmania, and when you go to Tasmania, you can still see the pictures of them from the turn of the last century, 1900s thereabout. And the very last one was called Truganini. If you look at her, her features are more African than any African you will ever see on the African continent, right? They had been unmixed, for thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years. So they were living there for thousands of years from the time that human beings first left Africa. We're talking around 65 to 80,000 years ago. And within 100 years, these Eurasians had wiped every single last one off of the face of the planet. There is not a single full-blooded Tasmanian left on the entire planet Earth, because they would do things like playing games where they would bury babies all the way up to their shoulders. And then they would have competitions to see who can kick the baby's head the furthest off of the baby's head. You understand? So that was what they would do. They would take women and chop off the heads of their husbands and force them to wear the husband's head as a necklace, while they would drag them and then rape them. So that's why I say only full-blooded ones, because they allowed the children who came from raping the women, at least some of those are still there, so they are a bit lighter, so forth and so on. But they wiped every single full-blooded Tasmanian off of the face of the entire planet Earth. You can look at what they did amongst the Arawak. You can look at the very first Holocaust in Namibia, the Herero and the Namakwa people. So you can go example after example, 10 million that Leopold killed in the Congo. Every single place that they've ever set foot, they committed genocide. Every single one without exception, every single place that they ever went, they committed genocide. So now we come to, all right, well, why did they do this? You understand what's in them that made them do that? And again, the way from Merikare all the way up to Sekhantajok, they're saying that they come from a place without resources, and that's why they behave in the ways that they behave. And we'll come back to the complementary opposites, but just so that we can follow this line of questioning. So we can look at, all right, well, why do they do this? Now, there is a scholar, Dr. Jacob Carruthers, and he says that idea that they behave the way they behave because of lack of resources or the environment that they found themselves in, he says that is actually one of the main critiques that he has of the ancients, that they didn't really understand that the Eurasian, even if they get lots of resources, that's not going to change their nature. Because they evolved throughout this whole worm glaciation, that is something that is now inherent to them. So let's look at Leopold. He had more resources than he could do anything with in multiple lifetimes. However, he still killed over 10 million people in the Congo. So again, this is a critique that we're saying, even if you put them in a different type of environment, they're still going to be, have those types of things.
Somebody also told me that because of the lack of melanin in their blood, it's also contributive, that makes them insensitive, and therefore they can be passionate. What's your take on that?
So if we're looking at, their skin color, we're looking at melanin, we're looking at skin color. There's a specific gene that's referred to as SLC24A5, a soluble liquid carrier 24A5, and it's referring to the specific place in where that is. And when you're looking at this, you're looking at what they have is what's called threonine, right? On that specific gene, you have an allele which is threonine. The original one is alanine. So all of the black people have this alanine. All of these Eurasians, they have threonine. You can actually see the gradation of how much that mutation has occurred, especially where it comes to skin color. And that single gene, that single site, is responsible for up to 40% of what accounts for the coloration. So what you see is that there has been a mutation in these Eurasians away from what the original was. And if you you can actually look at a map of this specific gene to see exactly where you have peoples who we would characterize as black is where they have this alanine. In the exact same place where you have what you would characterize as whites, that's where you have those who have threonine on SLC24A5. So we're looking at one thing, which is that mutation, that specific mutation. The second thing that we're looking at is intermixture with Neanderthals. So this is something else that makes Eurasians different from continental Africans, because the only degree...
Let me remind my listeners who are listening for the first time that whenever you hear Eurasians, he's talking about Europeans.
And Asia.
Europe
Europe and
and Asia.
Asia is one landmass.
Okay.
And I would also encourage them to go and verify that. Go look at a map and see if there's any river, any sea, anything that separates Europe and Asia.
Wow.
So to even say Europe is a fiction, a figment of imagination, to act like that's something different, it would be as ridiculous as saying, okay, I want Ghana to be a continent now. It doesn't fit the definition of a continent. It's tied to the rest of Africa. It's tied to the rest of the landmass. If you go and look at it with your own eyes, so what we're actually dealing with is that even though every single definition, and also that's something that's specific to English, because there are other cultures that don't recognize any separation between Europe and Asia. So if you look, to the Chinese, if you look at Russian, you look at other, places, they don't say, all right, Europe is one thing and Asia is a different thing. Other places just say, all right, how many continents are there? They don't say Europe is a separate continent from Asia because it's one thing. You understand? But let's come back to what we're talking about. We had a discussion yesterday about Ma'at and rulership, and we had the Lion House Cultural Center, and we'll have another one this coming month. But in this, I was making a specific point that what Eurasians have done now is we're looking at the effect of lack of resources. Now, when I was in undergrad, and also Dr. Amos Wilson talks about this, a noted psychologist, that you have what are called Skinner boxes. And this is where they will put rats in one box, and then they'll put rats in another box. And this one box, they have lots of space. They can exercise. They can, they can move around. They have water. They have food. They have every single resource that they could possibly need. They never have any conflicts. They never have, issues amongst themselves. These are rats, right? Now, on this other one, they'll dump all these rats in to the point where they can barely move, very little food, very little water, that they got to the point where they can calculate the exact minute where the conflict will break out. You understand? You can see that, and what Amos Wilson says is that that's the prototype of what they would do in the projects. If you ever hear the rappers say, oh, I'm from the project, so forth and so on, I'll shoot you, whatever. That was a prototype of if you put all these people, lump them into one box and call it the projects, and then don't let them have any jobs. You put guns in, you put drugs in. There are no gun factories in the projects, and there are no poppy fields. There are no cocaine plantations in the project. So where is it coming from? But again, this is what they've done with these rats. And then this is, again, what they've done with black people, African people. So again, what we're looking at is what they've done is that they've taken what has happened. What they've done is that they've taken what has happened to them. They were in the worm glaciation. They were in a place that had very few resources. Now they've made that something that they want everybody else in the world to experience. Because even though we're in Africa, we have abundant resources. I could go outside my house right now and pluck a mango. I could go outside my house right now and pluck a pawpaw. I can go outside my house right now and pluck some contomere, some, everything. I could not starve in Africa because everything is growing all around me. You understand? However, I could get a consciousness that, you know what, I lack. I don't have enough resources. What can give me that? Money. Money. Because that's the thing that I can control and say, all right, you don't have enough of that. Even if you have it, what your currency isn't as valuable as mine. So if you can manipulate this, imaginary, commodity called money, fiat currency, now I can get into you the exact same consciousness that's in these rats that don't have enough resources. So you have people, and
we already in it. So majority of us already in it.
This is exactly what I'm talking about. So you have, let's look going all the way back to Dinknesh. So when I was in Ethiopia, that's what they call Lucy, right? This woman who everybody's descended from, Lucy or Dinknesh, which is called an Amarinya, means you are wonderful. So we're talking about 3.5 thereabout million years ago, right? That's quite a long time. Now, all the way up to about 100 years ago, you have you have proverbs about elephants. You have proverbs about rhinos. You have proverbs about all these animals that are around us. But if you're in Africa right now, you can't find them. You understand? You can't find all of these, flora, fauna that are mentioned in these proverbs. You have elders who are still alive who can tell you when they were young that they could drink from the Kole Lagoon. You have elders who could tell you before there was galamsey water. You understand? Before there was arsenic and mercury and all these things. So we have 3.5 million years of pristine water, of animals around us, but within 100 years, all of those are being exterminated. where you have people who are still ethnically African, but what do they have? Not enough resources. They don't have enough money. So these same people who would only, they would have proverbs about, you don't kill the strongest elephant, the older one, or the one, that's sickly. Those are the ones who you would, do that so that they can regenerate. You would have in Samampal where you don't go and cut down trees. You had all of these restrictions and taboos and so forth and so on. But if you can get into into the consciousness of a person that they don't have enough resources, now you have poachers, where they will take a chainsaw and cut the face off an elephant and leave the rest of it. Where they'll take a chainsaw and cut the nose off of a rhino and leave the rest of it. You understand? That's not African. That's very anti-African behavior. But what has now changed? What has changed is that those Africans have been transformed away from being Africans internally by getting this I don't have enough resource consciousness in them. So that's what the whites were dealing with in Eurasia for, thousands and thousands of years. What they've now done is they've made that experience something that everybody has to deal with.
So everyone's reality.
It's now everyone's reality, because now money is the situation. You don't have enough of it. So as soon as you can be convinced you don't have enough resources that you need to live, you'll switch. You'll change. It's like how they talk about, I remember sometime in the Andes Mountains, there was this soccer team, football team, where the plane crashed. They started practicing cannibalism, because as soon as they get into a consciousness, these are people who played together, they're friends, so forth and so on. As soon as they can get into a consciousness that they don't have enough resources, now, if you can look at that right there, it's not connected. Okay. That as soon as they can get into a consciousness that they don't have enough resources, everything switches. Almost like automatically, now they start killing people. First they eat the ones who died, then they start killing the ones who aren't dead, because they've now had a change in consciousness to, I don't have enough resources, what do I do? This is where you look to Europe. That's where you have Vladi the Impaler, all these, Dracula, all of these stories. They're telling you this is what they went through. You understand? They didn't have enough resources. So if I don't have enough resources, then I have to eat your kids. You understand? But we'll come back here. But that was just to answer your question. Why did they behave the way they behaved? We're looking, one, at the resource as, or lack thereof, as the impetus for that change in behavior. But now even people who are ethnically African, that they can start imitating that Eurasian behavior just by mimicking the situation that caused them to be the way that they were, of not having enough resources. But we'll come back here to this idea. We were talking previously about free will, destiny, and complements, that there's this chaotic principle that may assert itself, and a person may stray away from their life's path. So we can talk about Africa as perhaps we can say that we've strayed away from our destiny, our life's path. So if at one point in time we were the preservers of the planet, we were the preservers of nature, now you see people who will still say, oh, those are Africans, those are black people, but they're not doing things that their ancestors were doing. They're not preserving the planet, you understand? Now they're doing galamsey, you understand? For 3.5 million years, and that's a very conservative estimate, we had the clean water, we had these animals, we had all those things. Within the last 50 to 100 years, we could say that definitely at this point in time, we've strayed away from our life's path. Now, in that, we could gain wisdom and then come back to it. You understand? Because it's not inherent that we have to be behaving like Eurasians. And again, when we're talking about complementary opposites, I don't like to phrase it in terms of complementary opposites as African versus diametric opposites is European. We're talking about trends, that generally this is what African people have practiced, and we can give copious evidence that shows that that's what we have practiced as African people. Many of us as African people to this day, all throughout the continent, all throughout the world, we're not practicing that anymore. But that's one of the foundational things of what makes African people African. Now we're looking at trends among Eurasians, that is the main thing, diametric opposites. These two are against each other. This is different from that, and one has to be ascribed value, and its opposite has to be ascribed non-value. This is the core thing that shows that is God versus devil. That is the core way that they get that idea into you, is say that there's one thing called God and its opposite is called a devil. This one is all good. This one is all evil. And we were talking about it yesterday. If you say that God only creates good things, or everything God does is good, well, didn't he create the devil that's supposed to be all evil? How can you be all good and create all good, but then you create something that's all evil? It doesn't make sense. However, when we're coming to this, what we're dealing with is that diametric opposites. If I and I even test people who are supposed to be African, I say, can you think like a Eurasian? They say, oh, I don't know. Let's try it. Diametric opposites between white and black. Which one is supposed to be good and which one is supposed to be bad? They say, oh, in Eurasian thought, white is good, black is bad. I say, okay, good. You know how to think like a Eurasian. Between man and woman, which one is supposed to be good, which one is supposed to be bad? They say, okay, man is good, that's Adam, and Eve is evil, that's woman. I can go through a list. If I say, kinky hair and straight hair, which one is supposed to be good? And again, it's not universal at all. This is just Eurasian thought. However, all of us are able to think like Eurasians because we've all been exposed to it through miseducation. We've all been exposed to it through religion. We've all been exposed to it through Eurasian political systems and so forth and so on. So that's a trend of what they tend to do. This is a trend of what we tend to do. But even if we're really getting at the core of complementary opposites, we're looking at ma'at, we're looking at propriety, doing the appropriate thing at the appropriate time. So if we say it's complementary opposites versus diametric opposites, what we're actually doing is we're doing diametric opposites. We're saying this one is good and that one is evil, as opposed to propriety is saying when is this one supposed to be done and when is that one supposed to be done. It's a much more complex way of dealing with it. You understand? Because you can't just say this one is always evil. Because if you do that, you're actually doing that one. And I'll say, oh, yes, I have a rhetorical ethic where I say complementary opposites is good, but I'm vilifying the opposite of it. That's not complementary opposites. So what we have to do is be wise enough to know that this is a time when diametric opposites is useful. This is a time where complementary opposites is useful. Either one is a knife. How are you going to use it? Are you going to use it to bring about life? Or are you going to use it to bring about destruction? Even life and destruction, you say, bibin say, bibin ye. That if one thing, right? So if one thing doesn't spoil, another thing cannot do well.
So that is the concept of deriving some essence from what we would term as negative or bad.
So there's a proverb: "Papa na boni frimuba, boni so na papa frimuba." So
Papa muna boni friba, na boni muna papa friba.
Aye. So the idea is that here's something that you may say is bad. So you say, okay, this my cow died. The cow died or whatever. Okay, well now the corpse of the cow goes into the earth, and from that now something grows on that spot. You understand? Mm-hmm. So here was something that you would say, all right, it's bad, but from that you have something that is now sustaining and bringing about life. Mm-hmm. So again, it's a much more dynamic and complex way of looking at these things than to say one thing is always all good and the other thing is always all evil. You understand? So again, this is what Chukwunyere Kamalu deals with in Person, Divinity, and Nature. The idea, an African idea that's prototypically African, is that the Supreme Being is seen as being all powerfully, but not necessarily at all times would you classify every single thing as all good. All right, this is what it is. I may not like it. That's a subjective judgment of whether I consider it to be good or not. Now, if it's something where, okay, I just lost my 1,000 Ghana cedis, I may consider that to be bad. You find my 1,000 Ghana cedis somewhere in a taxi, you consider that to be good. All of it is part of the totality, but from my perspective, I see this as not being good. From your perspective, you see that as, being very good. Now, for me, I may not have any loss from it, but from you, now you may be able to care for your child. So something good has come out of something that I consider to be bad. You understand? Yeah. And, this is when you start thinking about how all these things interrelate. You could see it as, I'll give you another example, and this is in a book by Foucault, Self-Healing Power and Therapy, where he gives an example of when maybe you're about to go on a trip, mm-hmm. and then unexpectedly somebody shows your long-lost friend or whatever, or family member shows up at your doorstep. Now you can't go on the trip anymore. Now the bus that you would have taken crashes. So, just to see this interrelation between...
We hear a lot of Thanksgiving at church about these scenarios.
These types of scenarios?
I wanted to travel and this thing happened and I was like, why can't I travel? And the next time I heard that the car got accident, armed robbers attacked the car, and we give thanks to God at church.
Yeah, I don't know how true any of those are because it's happening in a church. So anything that happens in a church is suspect. To me, it's very suspect. It's very suspect. However,
somebody left her 3310, no 3310, the Nokia 3310, somewhere on her couch and nobody paid it
Mm-hmm.
for 24 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And now Thanksgiving was given on that.
Mm-mm-mm. Yeah, so it may be true, it may not be true, but if it happens in a church, I'm likely to think that it may not be true.
Why?
We'll make that the topic of the next lecture, why Dr. Kamban thinks that what's said in a church is maybe not going to be true.
Anyway.
All right. But let's move forward. So just the scenario, and this actually...
Yeah, let me announce that our listeners can send in their messages for us to read for them on 024778596, and at the appropriate time I'll ask you to call. So get ready on the same line. So when I say you call the same line and have your contribution, questions and answers there. Doc, continue.
Yeah, very good. So when I was in undergrad, I had a situation where I was going to go to Mardi Gras in New Orleans. So Mardi Gras is this huge festival where lots of things happen. You understand? Lots of deaths occur. All types of things go on. It's this, just wild time. The very evening I was supposed to go, my father showed up at my doorstep. I wasn't able to go anymore. Now, I didn't have any, inclination that, a bus I would have traveled on would have done whatever. But this is now me looking in retrospect. How come my father just showed up on my doorstep? That's what came to mind when I read this thing in Self-Healing Power and Therapy, because he says, maybe, it's unexpected. You're about to travel and somebody shows up, a family member. He said that what causes this is what's called minyenye. And he said that these are radiations. You understand? Like sometimes you're thinking about a person and then you get that call. And it's like, wow, you're
somebody's name
and they walk in the door. And it's like, wow, what's going on? That this is something that is actually understood by the people of Congo. They said this is due to what's called minyenye. You understand? And
what language is that?
This is Kikongo.
Okay.
Kikongo from the Congo, right? From the ancient Congo Empire. And again, they have a whole articulated way of explaining what's actually going on. So we think, I can't communicate unless I have a phone, unless I have this or device or whatever. But what it's actually talking about is communication on a different level. That there is what is called action at a distance. There's a relation between these things that are very far apart. Now you would think, okay, there's no relation unless I touch the thing. Now something has happened, right? But no, that there can be an impact and effect on something that's extremely far away. Let me give you an example. If I write a poem about stars, how far away are those stars from me? You understand? But those stars have had an impact on me. I looked at them and the light had traveled for however many millions or billions of light years to finally touch my eye. At the time that I happened to look up, they touched my eye and now they've had an impact on me. The impact is seen in the poem that I write about the stars. You understand? So that's just a very concrete example of something that's extremely far in terms of distance. However, it's had an impact on something that's,
communicating directly.
Exactly. So all of these things are what you can find in African thought, these concepts, these ideas. And again, they come to this idea of complementary opposites. It doesn't have to be that this one is good and its opposite is automatically evil all the time. And another analogy that's given in the same book, Self-Healing Power and Therapy by Nganga Fukiao, he says you can think about it like a magnet. So if I have a magnet, here's a bar magnet, where this side is positive, this side is negative, and they're labeled as such. You can see the plus here, you can see the negative here. And I was just thinking about this too. I'm going to insert this. I have this on this microphone. They have these non-volt batteries. And the negative charge is called the female charge, and the positive charge is the male charge. That's very Eurasian. Even every single time I put the battery in, I think this is so Eurasian. Why is the negative female and the positive male?
I have a battery to use.
I have a battery to use. Oh, you have to think about these things. You have to think literally every time I put it in, I say, the female is negative and the male is positive. That's rooted in the Eurasian worldview. That is rooted in the Eurasian worldview. But we'll come back. So he talks about a magnet, and he says, all right, if you have a bar magnet, this side is red, this side is whatever, black or white or whatever, that's supposed to be negative. Even that's very Eurasian. Why is the black negative? But we'll come back.
So in your view, how do you want us to label them?
I'm saying that I'll give you an example. My father, he always, like, the whole thing is just for the connection. So like if your car battery runs down, regardless of whether you put the black on the positive or the red on the negative, as long as you keep those two separate and you know the cord is going from one to another, you can actually put the black onto the positive. You understand? You have the cables that you're using to do a jump. You can put the black from positive to positive. You can put the red from negative to negative, and it will work perfectly. I had one time where my car broke down, and my father always does this. He always puts black on the positive, positive to positive. Now you can't go from positive to negative. It will mess up, you know, the batteries. But you can go. It's just a matter of what color they decide to put on this exact same copper cable. Now, I had one time my car broke down and it was a battery problem. And I had the red on the from positive to positive and the black from negative to negative, and it wouldn't work. There was actually a fault in the positive one, in the red one, I should say. There was like a little kink in it and it was starting to get torn. So it didn't have the full charge to be able to go. I said, you know what? I should do what my father does. And the black didn't have any fault. So I put the black from positive to positive, then I just had the red from negative to negative. It started up immediately. You understand? Just because it's the exact same cord. It's the exact same copper wire that's going from one to another. But we've digressed. Let's come back to the magnet, though, as the point why I introduced that. So if you have this side that we're calling positive, this side we're calling negative. On the positive side, if you take a knife or a saw, you cut into that positive side, you'll see that in this little sliver, there's now negative here. And this, when what's left of this longer side, that this part is positive here. You understand? So no matter where you cut, now let's look at the negative side. If you do the exact same thing,
you'll find a positive there.
Exactly. You cut here, and now this sliver on the side that you were calling all negative, that here's a positive right here at the end of this tiny bar. And what it says, and he gives another analogy of an orange. So if I ask you, how does an orange taste? How would you describe it? How would you describe it? That's a question.
Yeah, we say it's sweet.
You would say it's sweet, right? He says, okay, that's when you're only thinking about the juice from the orange. But now let's take the orange as a whole. So if you chew on the seed, right, and some of you may have chewed on the seed before, you say it's not.
I do that for the dewormer.
Right. And how does that taste?
No, it's not sweet.
It's not sweet, right? But if we're only focusing on the thing that we're saying is sweet all the time, is orange is sweet. But you're not taking it as a whole.
And even the cover. Sometimes I chew the cover as well.
Right. That's the next part I was going to come to. All right, so now the skin of the orange, you know, how would you say the peel, I should say, of the orange? Yeah. How would you say that is, right? It's not, you wouldn't say it's sweet. No. You know, if you're talking about the furthest outside that still has the color, that's going to be also a little bit bitter. If you're talking about that little white in between, it's kind of tasteless. But again, this is the analogy that he's given. He's saying that a human being is like this. So your mother, you know, in the morning, she may send you off. Oh, she's sweet. She's kissing you. Now you do something bad. Now she spanks you. You understand? This exact same person, she has inside of her the capacity to do things that you think are sweet. And then she also has the capacity to do things that you think are bitter or sour or whatever, what have you. But now the thing that she's doing that you're thinking is bitter, you've done something wrong, and she's trying to discipline you and keep you on the good path so you can be moral and ethical. The thing that you are thinking is bad actually will have a good result. Now imagine if you do something bad and she says, they say, well, right? And the idea is that if you are dancing, if your child is dancing a bad dance, you should tell the child that they're dancing a bad dance. You shouldn't say, oh, keep up. Hey, you're jamming. Keep going with it. Right. So this is the idea that the thing that you, from a child's perspective, you think is bad, that actually that thing is good. If she just keeps telling you keep doing what's bad and she keeps rewarding you for doing what's bad, when you grow up, you'll just be drinking and smoking and doing whatever because there's never any punishment. There's never any repercussion that you've seen in your life. You understand? So again, all of this, I'm giving you various examples of complementary opposites from the African worldview. Is drastically different from the view of God, all good, devil, all evil. And they had to actually have a movement. We discussed this before, this idea of Eshu, right? Eshu. So when Eurasians came to Yoruba land, they said, okay, where's your devil? What is that? We don't have one. We have all these different Orisha.
So the Europeans have to ask for the Africans.
If you're going to translate a Bible, now you need a word for devil in the language. But what happens if in your worldview you don't have this concept? Now you just have to take one of the Orisha and say, all right, well, then that one's going to be your devil. You understand? You have to take Seth. You have to take Anansi. You have to take Sasabonsam. You have to find something there, because otherwise, what are you going to translate it as?
Okay, so let's look at this and we'll go for a quick musical break, and then we'll come to continue. Let's look at the benefit of seeing the opposite as complementary as against good and evil.
I would rather phrase it in terms of when is it useful to see it in terms of complements, and when is it useful to see it in terms of diametric opposites. Because again, if we phrase it in those terms, we're actually doing diametric opposites. We're saying this one is good and that one is evil. What is it? How is that different from God versus the devil? It's the exact same thing. So we even have to reorient how we're going to even look at this thing.
Okay.
Very good.
Okay. Yes. So are you going to go into that before we go for the break?
I thought you said we'll go for the break, so we can do the quick break and then we'll go into that.
All right. So somebody sending me a message on WhatsApp that he is interested in the books. So we'll get the books and send it and WhatsApp them to you so that you can download. By then, you can send us your messages as well on 024778596, 024778596, and at the appropriate time, I will let you call in.
Production to the next level. We're just getting started.
I just bought the Akan album.
Whoa, yeah.
I just bought the Akan album. I saw there were two options. I could get it from iTunes or I could get it from Aftown. And Aftown looked like an African site. So which one did I decide to purchase from?
Buy it from Aftown.
I bought it from Aftown.
We'll talk about that.
These are the choices. Everybody has a choice. I can either give it to iTunes and he gets it, or I can get it to Aftown and they get it.
Taking your production to the next level. Just getting
No. That's live. It's online. We are online. So yeah, I'll send you that. You go to our page on Facebook and you click on the listener link and you can listen. Or if you're this number is on WhatsApp, I'll send you the listener link on WhatsApp. This number is from WhatsApp, right? The one is 3 or okay. 0266451. I'll send it to you. It's something that you need to know.
Every morning.
We. Oh, now.
African traditional music.
I before I was America, I was Honduras.
Okay. I'm a traditional music. You just say man, them higher there.
You know, you're beautiful. Who said no? Honor, I said, oh, yeah, be man chain ha. Every say I had a yin now, your ferry say, yeah, before now, so I heard there. I'm a quite bontin, I'm a botching ma, I'm bosom.
That's another beautiful song from the man Khan. When the album was about to be released, somebody told me that this album will be the only album to overthrow Pabuka as the album of the decades, you know, and true and behold, it is. And of a Doc, you were talking about a Khan album, and you said you saw it, you wanted to buy it, and you saw it at two places.
Yeah, I saw it on iTunes and I saw the Aftown and it looked like Aftown was the African one. They were in Ghana CDs and everything. So I said, okay, which one am I going to choose?
The same album though.
The exact same album. I could choose to get it from iTunes, which is not African owned, or I could choose to get it from Aftown, which is African owned. So where do you think I purchased it from?
After
Aftown. So I got my Aftown credits. I see how to operate it. Put in my CalBank card info, and I have it right now. I just put it on my phone on its own playlist. I have it on the laptop.
Wow.
We're rolling.
Wow. Account manager is listening, and I think that would be great news for him. Dr. Obadele Kambon is our guest every Monday on Good Morning Africa, and he is a lecturer and a research fellow at the University of Ghana Department of the African Studies Department. And if such a man is buying your album as an artist, then you're a great artist. All right, Doc, let's continue from where we left. Where we're about to look at the benefit of seeing things, especially the opposite, in the complementary way.
Right.
And you also said that before we do that, we have to look at when to see something as good and when to say something is evil. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is the idea is asemba na ebube, asemaya na emube, which is the idea that bibia onimre, that everything has its time. When the issue arises, that's when you cite the proverb. When the issue doesn't arise, you don't cite the proverb. So the idea is, all right, when is it useful to see things as complementary? And even when is it useful to see things in terms of the diametric thing? So again, we're saying that the tendencies and the trends for African people have been to see things as diametric. The trends and tendencies are for Eurasians to tend to see things as diametric opposites. And both of those, again, going back to Sheikh and Job, he's saying that the Southern cradle, it really is something that would support this way of thinking that we do in various aspects. The Northern cradle, which is where the Eurasians are, that really supports, doing things the way they do, because if they want to live, then they really need to see, if I'm stronger, that's better. If I'm this, that's better. If I'm this, otherwise they're going to die. So they need to, do some of those things. Survival of the fittest, might makes right, only the strong survive. These are their proverbs. They're telling you exactly what they think in, what they say in their mythology. All right, Zeus is like this. All right, Thor is like this. God is a man, so forth and so on. In African thought, we're showing you what we think about it. So if I say Atana Nyongma, we're showing you this is how we think about it. You understand?
God is the makeup of both
female and male, because we know to be a creator. If I at the beginning I say because I know that if you are going to be a creator, it can't just be you.
Yes.
If I know that your future wife, who we'll look for, if she is going to be a creator very soon, if she's going to be a creator, it can't be just her. That if I know how procreation works, then that means I know that's the order since the beginning. That's how creation works. So if I even go into something like, all right, the earth, is it all male or all female, right? So in ancient Kemet, they saw Geb as being essentially masculine. In Geb, that's the earth, the divinity of the earth as being essentially masculine.
And in Ghana, among the Akans, we call
Asase, exactly. So we see the earth as being essentially feminine. Now, all of us are made out of the same materials that the earth is made out of, but some of us who have come from those same materials, some of us manifest as masculine, some of us manifest as feminine. You understand? So again, if you're going to say, all right, is the earth all masculine or all feminine, you'll lose, because there are both of those elements in there. There may be tendencies more towards this, tendencies more towards that. And that's even the purpose of rites of passage. So if you read Conversations with Ogo Temeli, he says that the whole reason for circumcision and excision, that those are the complementary processes. The purpose of circumcision for the Dogon is that once you become a man, you've gotten to a certain age, now they remove the feminine part from you, which is the foreskin. They say once you become a woman, you come of the age, then they remove the masculine part from you, which is the clitoris. So it's not the Arab thing. They don't even understand why they're doing what they're doing. But again, if you come to the African worldview, if you say, all right, let's get rid of excision, that's a female one, that's female genital mutilation, that means you also have to get rid of circumcision, because both of those are to say, all right, you have a tendency for womanhood. To make you a woman, we have to get rid of the masculine aspect and let you proceed on that path. To make you a man, we have to get rid of the feminine aspect and let you proceed along that path. Otherwise, you'll be confused. You'll have gender confusion. You don't know what you are, whatever. But that's something that happens once you become a certain age. It's not that you're circumcised at birth. You understand? That's also alien to African people. African people from...
Is the female, let me say, it's the circumcision something that you think is good?
It's not, is it good or is it bad?
Okay.
The thing is, in the society in which it's practiced, what is the utility for it? When are they doing it and why are they doing it? So among the Dogon, they practice circumcision and excision. Among the Akan, traditionally, they didn't practice either one. They saw both of those as being deformities. So you can't be a Ohene if you have gone through this process, because it's seen that the body of the ruler is sacred, right? So if you have any damages, defects, you can't be the ruler, right? And again, it comes to that's the worldview, that's the idea. So all of us are seeing the same African worldview, but how are we acting on it? I'll give you another example in terms of the afterlife. And I'll come back to this point that we're on. But in terms of afterlife, we see, all right, if we're living, we're all right side up, as we would call it. Our heads are facing this way. The idea is, okay, well, death is the opposite of life. It's a complementary opposite of life. So therefore, whatever we're doing here, it must be the opposite in the afterlife. So if you go to the coffin text, especially, you have text after text after text. It's almost, it gets to be a bit much, where it says, this is a spell so that you don't have to walk upside down in the afterlife. The idea is that everybody in the afterlife is walking upside down, but if you don't want to, then you have to be able to do this ritual and that ritual and this ritual and that ritual, because that's the opposite of what we're doing now. I'm alive, they're dead. If I'm right side up, they must be upside down. But now let's look at, okay, if you go to Angola, they have a practice called Ngolo, wherein all of the things are saying that to be like the ancestors, to get the power of the ancestors, you need to be upside down. You understand? If you come here to Ghana, we have the same worldview in terms of upside down as being like in the realm of the ancestors, but you have a thing where you're not supposed to let your head touch the ground. You're not supposed to go upside down. You understand? That is seen as, being something that would make your head impure or whatever. You understand? So you have to do krad jariye, or in Yoruba, anlatiweri, that you would have to bathe your head. You understand? So we're all seeing it as, the ancestral realm is the opposite, the inverse of what we're doing. But now we have a thing of, is it good or is it bad? Should we be doing it or should we not be doing it? For the people of Congo, they say, yeah, that's how we are able to imitate our ancestors, is by going upside down like them. In Kemet, you have these things where they say, this is a spell so that I don't have to do that.
I just like, I read about the Guineans, and it was said that when Kwame Nkrumah was made co-president of Guinea, after he was overthrown from Ghana, he told them that for the African to put value on himself, respect himself, and have high self-esteem, white clothes for funerals and anything sad, and use black clothes for birthdays, weddings, and everything good. And it has stayed up to now. So if you go there right now, and you're in Ghana where we use white for merrymaking, black for sad days and all that, you'll be like, what are these guys doing? And I know majority of us say that these people are devil worshippers.
That's what happens when you are injected with the white worldview. But that's actually much more in alignment with African thought. There's something called Dikenga, and I wear it every day, and I've been wearing it every day for the past about 20 years.
Show it to our Facebook people.
I'll show it to the Abibi Tumi Casa people. The people who are on white websites, we don't need you to see any of this. You're not serious. But if you come to the Dikenga, what you're seeing here is that this place is called Kala. It's birth, and it also means blackness. It also means life. Kala. That's my wife's name, Kala. Okay. So black, because she was so black, they said, we'll give you the name Kala. So Kala is birth here. Here you come to the high point. This is Tukula, and that's represented by blackness, of course. Tukula is represented by red. It's the sun at its highest point. So here you have sunrise. Then you come up to the sun at its highest point. That's Tukula. That's one of my son's names, one of his middle names. And, that is when you're at your height, your power, your strength, your middle age. You're at the strongest you'll ever be. And eventually your strength and all of that wanes, and you become an elder. Then you come down here to Luvemba. It's represented by a whitish, grayish color. And they even say, all right, when your hair starts to turn white, it's because of a buildup of this Luvemba in you. And Akan, they refer to as Krabeng. And in the book, African Spirituality on Becoming Ancestors, they said this is the ejection that happens from a person when they die, especially in a violent accident or something else, that what comes out, they say, oh, that's the Krabeng. That is, this ejection that's coming from the Kra when it's leaving. So again, here you have birth and life represented by blackness. Here you have Luvemba represented by this whiteness. And you have all these stories that when these Eurasians first came to Africa, they were thinking, oh, there must be spirits, they must be dead, they must be ancestors because they're colored like white. If we know that living people are all black, then the inverse would be that, well, in the afterlife, they must be all white. You understand? And this is, if you look at all types of spiritual ceremonies, they always put shire on. Right? They put shire to let you know that I've gone into the other realm. You understand? Now, the death is not seen as inherently bad. It's not seen as being inherently evil. So this realm of the ancestors is called Kumpemba. This would be going towards the shire. Impemba is the exact same word as when we're talking about shire. Or I think in Ewe is Ailo. So, Ailo, right?
And let me announce something today. So if you want to get the visuals of what he's explaining now, you get to Facebook and you get everything there.
And join a BB to Mikasa.
Those watching live on Facebook right now. Okay, continue, Doc.
Right. So this whole realm underneath is called Kumpemba, going towards the white clay, and the white clay actually has healing properties. Right.
Yeah.
This upper part is called Kunseke. This is the realm of the living, and is represented by the black. Here, this is represented by the white. You understand? So this is seen as what your ancestors send forth. So when you look at the white clay is coming up on the riverside or whatever, you've buried your ancestors down there. What they've returned to you is this white clay. So if you have stomach problems, if you have food poisoning, you take in this white clay. It's the main thing. They call it kaolin powder. It's the main thing in kaopectate. This is something that people drink if their stomachs are upset, and it's made out of this exact same white powder that we've been using, that you can even buy at these shops. They'll have it in these little pellets that you can take in, because what it does is it has adsorbent properties. So if you have poisons, and actually I was looking at a documentary on the macaw, which is a type of bird, and they're able to eat berries that are poisonous to them. However, immediately after doing that, they'll go down to the riverside and they'll ingest some of this same white clay, right? Wow. So all these animals know this, and African people knew this, right? And that's why it features prominently. We put it on our largest organ, which is the skin, in order to draw out these impurities. So you have the white powers, then you have the black powers, which is what we will call moto, which is this black powder.
Yeah, moto.
Right? So if you know this black powder, all of these incisions, I had it rubbed into these incisions when I was being initiated initially. So again, we're seeing the complements of these opposites. So the complementary side is that the black power is useful. This white or grayish power is also, useful. Each one in its own time, each one, for what it's there for. So again, this is what we see. So what I'm saying, and coming back to the example of Guinea, that what they're doing is actually in alignment with how African people saw birth and life and how they saw death all throughout. This is the reason why. So people are doing rituals, but they have no idea why they're doing it. You see people put this white powder on. They're like, they don't. If you say, what's the white powder mean? They don't know, because they haven't gone and studied with the people from Congo. They haven't gone and studied the text from Kemet, because if you only look at the fragment outside of the context of the network, then you're lost. But once you see how all of these relate together, you see, okay, Congo has a piece, Kemet has a piece, Ghana has a piece. Let's put together the pieces of the puzzle. Now we can say, oh, this is Africa. But if I just show you a little tiny piece of the puzzle, you say, oh, I don't know what that is. Oh, that's Ghana. That's where you are. But you're not seeing it because you're only seeing this little curved out piece of the puzzle. So again, this is why it's necessary to see things as African people throughout the African world, as opposed to a fragmented type of thing. We can become so focused in on a thing that I can't even see what this is anymore. But with my camera, once I am able to come out, now I say, oh, now I know what it is. You understand?
Let me announce that from now you can call. If you want to call and ask Dr. Obadele Kambo any question, you can call on the same number, 02477859886. Those of you listening from outside of Ghana, just add the country code, which is +233. +233, and you add the number 24778596. If you're in Ghana, just dial 02477859886. 8596 024778596. Let's have your questions, your contributions, and whatever you have to say about what we've discussed so far. Doc, I will be happy if we can use the rest of our time. We have about 20 minutes to go to talk about the concept of worship itself. That we
Okay.
have to worship a certain deity, a certain being.
Yeah, let's do that. There was one thing I wanted to touch on before we deal with that, and then we'll come directly to that. I wanted to deal with the idea of the earth and then also reciprocity, because the earth is seen as the ultimate arbiter of justice. So if you do a transgression, it's seen that the earth itself will make things right, bring things back to a balance and ma'at. And when we talk about reciprocity, it means that what you put out is what you get back. The very first occurrence that I've come across of that is in the story of Sekhetipin, which is the eloquent peasant, is what it's usually translated to in English. It's just story of the peasant. Now, when you look at this, it says, do what you do to others so that others may also do back to you. This is the idea of reciprocity. And Sakon and Saba, any deru leruto, you have it in all these different things. The one who puts out the ashes, that's the one who the ashes follow behind. So if you throw it into the air, all of these concepts all throughout Africa. And this is the idea of reciprocity. And I wanted to bring this into the idea of natural law, moral law being, linked together in terms of what we refer to as ma'at. Now, let's look at if you destroy the environment. So we talk about fossil fuels and all these things. So we're digging into the earth, we're pulling out these fuels, and what eventually that's going to do and what that's doing right now, we talk about the rising water levels all throughout the earth. Recently, a few months ago, there was a news story that Antarctica is breaking up, and that there's a part of this which is basically a huge sheet of ice, and a part of it is breaking off into a cleft that's the size of the state of Rhode Island, which is, pretty big size thing, a whole state. And the U.S., they were given that, as something you could think about, like maybe a Asante region or bigger than that. So if you have this huge thing that's going off of this sheet of ice, what's going to happen is that it's going to melt into the ocean and sea levels are going to rise. Again, this is the idea of reciprocity because of the actions that human beings are doing, that this is now causing, the greenhouse effect, what we talk about, this greenhouse effect. And the heat is now being trapped in as opposed to being radiating out back into space. So because of these actions, that, and then also raising cattle and all these other things that are, cutting down rainforests, all these things, that this is now going to have an impact on human life, especially those of us who are on the coast like Accra, like Rio de Janeiro, like New York City, like Manchester, like, Amsterdam. All these places are going to be in short order underwater, and a lot of places, islands, have already gone underwater. Things that used to be just 100 years ago, places where people lived, that there are places on the earth that are now uninhabitable because now they're underwater entirely. So this is what we're talking about when we're talking about reciprocity. If you do something, and again, we can look at this, is it good, is it bad? That's up to our subjective interpretation. But again, and I want to relate this also to this idea of cosmic order. Right now, anytime the sun rises and sets during the equinoxes or solstices, they talk about the age of Aquarius, right? In ancient Kemet, we refer to this as the time of Hapi, the inundation, or Minat the nurse. So we had before the age of the twins. This is when Kemet was in the two lands before it was united. After that, you have the age of the bull. And this is where what they refer to as Unu, where they had this I would say a venerance for the bull, the Apis bull, which was symbolized by Ptah, the divinity, and also Asar, the divinity. After that, you have the age of the ram. In the age of the ram, this is when Waset, what they call Thebes or Luxor, came to power. And Waset, the major divinity there was Amen, symbolized by a ram. So when you're in the age of the ram, the central place of veneration of the ram is at the high point. After that, we've come into the age of the fish, and this is where Christianity has come up. Now we're coming to the age of the water bringer, the age of Hapi, and what we're seeing actually on the ground.
Which age did ushered in Christianity?
So that's the age of the fish.
Okay.
And if you ever look at the back of the car, you'll see like this fish symbol there, and it says Jesus in it. This is what it's referring to, the fisher of souls and all this fish. that this has been the rise of Christianity. Now we're coming to the age of the water bringer, and what we're seeing again on the earth is a parallel. What's going on here is similar to what is going on in the skies, and this has always been seen as there's a link between what's going on as above, so below. When we're talking about upper and lower unification, that this can also refer to what's going on in the skies, in the stars, constellations, and then what's going on earth. So again, we're looking at this rise of sea levels.
Doc, we have a caller on the line.
No problem.
Let's pick him. Hello.
Hello, good morning, Dr. Campbell.
Good morning.
Yeah, I've been listening to the program so far, and I find it very, very interesting. I mean, related to the complementary opposites and all the analysis, all the examples, and all the information relating to African way of seeing this opposite part of what we are as human beings and what we have, you know. From my own little experience, since about a year plus now, I've started to deal with a special kind of diet. I've come to really have a better understanding of what the negative and positive polarities which exist in every living thing, or maybe even non-living thing, is all about. Because I grew up in a very Catholic family, and there it was always the devil and the angel a story going on and on, either this or that. You know, either you're totally bad or you're good, or you have a little bit of devil in you when you do something bad. You're all seen as devil child or evil child, and then when you do good, then you're once again an angel. But then, referencing that, when we go even as back as the Genesis from the Bible, I mean, I was touching on that, you know, because most of the Christians, if you read that book, which is part of our book, our story, from where all the plagiarized information taken out from there to build that book, you see that Adam and Eve were put in a garden where there's a tree that has both good and evil in it. So when you look at a tree that has both good and evil, it reflects again to some of the things you said. I'm just trying to be very, very quick. We have limited time on the show. But it shows that these two polarities exist in every human being, in every living thing. It's not about devil and angel. It depends on where one plays or manifests, and to which extent, where you can then classify it as what it is. It doesn't really mean the devil. And again, the Christians, they get it twisted, because this tree of good and evil, I think, is taken out from some documents or manuscripts out of Kemet, where these two polarities are also expressed, like in the story you mentioned, the story of Seth, and how, you know, you can see Seth as this, and at the same time Seth is also seen as that. So it's these two polarities that play in every human being, which complements to the diet I mentioned about, which I got to know about from late Dr. Sebi, may he rest in powers, which is the alkaline diet, where you tend to function as an electric body, because you're eating the proper food or the proper diet that complements your system, which is electric. And in an electricity, we know that it's copper and carbon that makes electricity, which is the negative and the positive polarity. And this is what you find in a human being. So if you look at it from the Christian perspective, we have both the devil and the God or the angel in us. And if they decide to see the devil as something evil, then they are at the same time saying that God is evil, because there's nothing that is created outside of that same God.
I think.
How can then something very perfect make something that is imperfect? So it's just maybe I'm jumping around the whole thing, but let me just conclude.
This is the tree of life. This is where they got that concept from.
This is something that should be made more open or more common for people to accept or hear it. Even in the universities, in the schools, this kind of teaching knowledge should be, brought down to the as low as primary. Because I live in Germany. I'm in Germany right now, calling from Germany, and they start to indoctrinate their children as early, even they start to teach them all those things that make them to build the system that they have today. from as early as nursery school.
Okay.
So this knowledge and this information is supposed to just be for the older people like we now listening to it. It should be broken down in the minest, simplest form, even to kindergarten, to nursery school. And this is how you build a generation that will come to start to reverse and to kind of change back all these misinformations and miseducation that we've been going through for hundreds of years and put us where we are today as Africans, black people all over the world. Whether you are anywhere, it doesn't really make a difference because the same picture of what's going on in your continent is going to reflect on you because that's your original roots. You know, so it's like there are trees that have like a root that forms three trees. We have it somewhere in Nigeria, in the ethnic part of Nigeria where I come from. I don't want to use the word tribe. So so if the root can grow as many trees as it wants. So wherever any black person is, be it in Caribbean and America, you will still feel the same effect of what is going on to you, going on from your source, your roots in Africa. So these teachings, it's great to hear it and listen to it from coming out from Ghana. Ghana is my neighbor as a Nigerian. I always visited there. So I give thanks for that, and I thank you so much. Thank the radio station for making such information available. And I was the person who requested for the list of books, the reference to a lot of books. If we can have that also, because I'm still searching and learning.
Yeah, we'll get the book, the title of the book for you after the show. We'll get the title of the book for you after the show. Yeah. Thank you very much for calling from Germany, and don't forget to share the links to people to also tune in each and every morning from Monday to Friday.
All right, Dr. Campbell.
Yes.
Thanks, respect, and enough love, peace and love to you.
Peace and love to you too.
All right. So we just had a caller from Germany who is also contributing that nicely to the show. Just that there was some noise at the background. Anyway, so this whole thing that we are discussing also found in Isaiah 45 verse 7. It says, "I'm from the light and create darkness. I bring prosperity and create disaster. I, the Lord, do all things." God, you do all. All right, Doc.
Right.
Let's continue. I hope you heard our brother.
Yes, I did. What I actually did, I asked Elikim to come around so he could actually see the tree of life.
Oh, okay. There's another caller on the line. Let's pick him. Hello. Yeah. Hello. Yeah. Good morning. Yeah, this is live. Is it? Are you Delhi? Yeah, good morning. We can hear you.
Yeah, I can hear you.
So go with your contribution.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I said go on with your contribution.
Okay. I would like Doc to touch on I would like Doc to touch on the FGM again, the female genital mutilation.
Oh, okay.
What is it again? Say it one more time. I don't hear what.
The female circumcision.
Okay. Yes. Okay.
And is that all? Ayodele, is that all your?
No, that's not all. I keep hearing myself. That's why.
Oh, that's okay.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the female genital.
Okay.
And also, no, that's not all.
Okay, go on.
You know, as Africans, how can we realize our destinies? Then we also know as Africans we have dominant energies which drives our destinies, which we seem to see as which we need to master, or which we see as which we label as good. And we have negative energies which go against or work against. How do that use forces and powers and master them to drive our path and our destiny?
Okay. I think Doc is jotting that down, and you get answers to that.
Okay.
All right.
Hello?
Yeah. Hello.
Did you get my question?
Yeah, we've got your question. So Doc is going to speak to it.
Okay. And also, I think lastly, I think you should touch on the summer solstice again because I lost it. Yeah, the summer solstice.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you very much. And Doc, there's another question on Facebook from spoke hot skull, and Gwevu spoke hot skull. Gwevu is saying that I want to know the concept of Akan creation of Nipa.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, is that clear to you?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
All right.
Yes.
All right. So, let's continue.
Okay.
From here. So you can also call on 024778596 and put your questions there to doctor as others have done, and it will be answered for you. Or if you have any contribution on the show so far, you can bring it. 024778596 024778596, and let's have your calls right now. And you can also send in your message. Let me see. I think there's the one here. Okay, somebody says, can we get a recorded version after the show to post on our platform, please? Yes. After the show, call me and let's talk about how to get it and repost it on your show. Yeah.
Okay.
That's from Otin. Okay, Doc, let's continue.
Okay, so there were a few things that were asked about. One was, well, the first thing we had our caller who came in and talked about the tree of life and good and evil.
Yeah, from Germany.
Right. So what I actually showed Elikim is in the temple called Ipet Sut. This is what they call Karnak Temple. That you have some of the very first depictions of the tree of life, and you can see Seti the first, who is also called Mim Ma'at Ra.
Mm-hmm.
And in this, what you see is him kneeling right in front of this tree of life. So even where did they get the concept of this tree? You understand? So you're going all throughout the temple. Everything is aligned in columns. But if you go to the temple of Jesaru, you'll see this tree of life. If you go to the temple of Seti, you'll see this tree of life. So again, this was originally an African concept because it's this idea of complementary opposites. You understand? However, when the Eurasians do it, when they bring it in, they also bring it in with all of their Eurasian ideas. So they inject their ideas into it. The analogy that Dr. Bin used to use was, okay, if I invite you to a feast and you partake of the feast and then you vomit up what I've given you, now you bring it back to me and I'm looking back through for African spices. How much sense does that make? This is essentially what we're doing. We're searching through Eurasian vomit and trying to find African spices. And I think that what your caller was trying to do is basically trying to rehabilitate the Christianity and say, it's not so bad because it still has some of these ideas. Well, why does it have those ideas? When you can go back to the original garden that all of the ingredients for that feast came from, when your ancestors carved the recipe into stone, why can't you go back to that? So even when you can find some of these things that haven't been completely obliterated from the Eurasian interpretation, so-called Christianity, what some of us prefer to call Christian sanity, why can't you go back to what the original thing was? You understand? So that would be what I would recommend for the person to do. I think that where he is in his development is that he's still trying to find the vomit, the African spices in the vomit. But that's not, something that he has to do. At a certain point, he can say, let's put the vomit off to the side.
Exactly.
Let's go back to the original garden and get the ingredients. Let's go read the recipes because our ancestors wrote the recipe down for that same feast. You understand? And now let's also do it with the understanding of there are those who want to come and take your feast. So now you need to learn how to protect your feast, as opposed to when the Greeks came, we taught them. Then the Greeks came as invaders and conquerors. The Romans learned from the Greeks, then they came as invaders and conquerors. So these same people who were teaching, now they're coming back to enslave, conquer, so forth and so on, and bring about Isfet, as opposed to Ma'at, which is when African people, black people, are running the land of African people, black people. So that was one. The second thing was destiny and how to master good and evil and things like this. So when we're talking about destiny, we've discussed it briefly on several other shows before, but the idea is that everyone comes to this earth with a destiny, with something that they are supposed to do. And it actually ties into what you asked us to deal with in terms of worship, that in Eurasian religions, they say your whole purpose for being on the planet is just to praise and worship this God who's jealous and no other God before me, all these things, so forth and so on. However, for the African worldview, African spiritual systems, your point of being on the planet isn't to worship this or worship that or whatever. It's to achieve your destiny. The main things that you do to achieve your destiny is to live your life ethically and morally in accordance with Ma'at. You understand? Once you do that, then you will be venerated as an ancestor. We pour libations, we call your name, because now you become a model that everyone else can look to and try to emulate. You understand? So this is the idea. Even the ruler was seen as the living model that everyone should be able to, emulate. This also ties into why that person can't have the damage or all these other things. So for you in your life, the idea is that how can, anytime you are at a crossroads, and this is how it's depicted in terms of Eshu. So Eshu is the divinity of the crossroads, they call him. Onile Orita, the owner of the house of the crossroads. And this is why in various African cultures, when you have any type of thing that you need to do, any ritual or sacrifice, you'll do it at the crossroads. Because what that symbolizes is you're at the crossroads of your life. You can decide this path, that path, or that path.
Okay,
you understand?
You're talking about destiny. Yeah.
I'm talking about destiny, right? Because you can think about destiny as a life's path. So now on your life's path, you can come to a crossroads in that life's path, right? This even when we talk about ancestors, we say those who have come before, right? So that's how it's referred to in Kemet, those who walked on the path before. So that's even why you read from them the signs that they left behind, because they walked there before. So now the Proverbs, the instructions of Ptah-hotep, all of these things, these are the guideposts and the signs that tell you, don't go that way. Go this way. So one way that you can learn which path to take is by listening directly to the words of your ancestors without any interpreters, because your ancestors tell you. We had a discussion before after one of our talks. You were like, oh, I don't know how to just, not go off on these people.
Yeah.
I said, listen to what Ptah-hotep said in this situation, that you should be cool. So as soon as you said it, it resonated. I have a whole different worldview, because he was at a crossroads in his life. He could choose to go off on somebody. That person has a gun. He can choose to stay cool. And not in this particular situation, right? And it's not to say that going off is always going to be bad. It's to say when you're at the crossroads, you get this inclination, this tibois, your conscience that will tell you, I should go this way, I should go that way. You can get further support from the words of your ancestors, all these guideposts.
How do you hear your ancestors?
So there are various things. One that's very literal is that you can actually listen to what they said in Proverbs.
Okay.
Right? So when you're in a situation, a proverb that they say, Onipa wa ne tekremampro. This is the reason why, is because their words live on in what they said. So here I'm in this situation, and I think, wow, one person will yanko churan, and I realized that I was just trying to prevent this person from doing something. That proverb came to me. That is literally the voice of your ancestors that's coming to you. Literally, they said it, and now it's coming to you. So you say, you know what? Let me not try to block this person from doing whatever they're doing. They can get theirs, I'll get mine. Fine. You understand? So that's one way. Another way is you pour libations. And when you pour libations, we were talking about affirmations as well. When you pour libations, you say, I want this, I need that, I need that. And you'll see in the course of your life the exact same things. So for some people, they look at libations as even more for myself than for anything that's outside, because I'm the one who's saying the things that I need. I'm saying what I want not to happen. But then we even have to look at the concept of self, because are your ancestors really outside of who you are? Are your ancestors outside of yourself? If I say I'm doing it for myself, aren't they also an extension of yourself? Because if you go to the book of Perit and Heru, which is the book of coming forth by day, what the Eurasians who are dead in the head call the book of the dead, there's this idea of the divinity Amen is one and only one who has no second, the one divinity but who has many arms. So this is to say everything that you see is just yet another manifestation of this exact same divinity. You understand? So even my ancestor looks like something different from me, but if Amen is one, this means that all of us are just part of Amen. Amen is the hidden one, the one that you can't see, but you can't see because you can never know the vastness of what everything is. So even right now, I can't see what's going on behind me, but the word in Akan, Brechiri Huno Adye, that's the word for the Supreme Being, Brechiri Huno Adye, the one who you bring it behind, they still see what's going on. This means that which is everything. So if I say everything that I know, you can say, okay, that's a lot. Now add everything I know to everything you know, that's even more. Now let's add everything that every single one of us has ever seen, ever heard, ever experienced, ever tasted. That's a lot of knowledge, just the three of us, but now add everything. That's where you get to the concept of Jinyame. And you see there's very Eurasian interpretation, which is very recent. That's not what it's about, right? That's the translation of the Eurasian thought. The original proverb is Abodia Santan Yifrititi. Abodia Santan is like this continuous succession of creation. Abodia Santan. Right, right. And it's the same thing. So when you say Abodia Santan Yifrititi, Obinti asa na onim na shasye. Na obinti na sen kosi na wiye. Jinyame. I'll come again.
Nobody lives to the end.
No one has lived who knows its beginning, and no one will live up to its end. Not his, and not him.
Okay.
We gotta walk up out of these Eurasian training, because even the English language is set to tell us him, his. Arade, Yankopon, Arade feminine, Yankopon masculine. You understand? And again, you see it in our gold weights. You see it in our proverbs.
Each and every day, your teachings made me really understand the African concept. It's so rich and scientific. You understand?
Right. Because how can you be a creator and it's his? That's the most ridiculous thing. You understand? But it makes sense from the Eurasian worldview. If I'm in a cave and I'm strong and I can beat up the woman, then men are good. You understand? But that's, again, not really in concert with how African people see these things.
On that note, next week we will talk about how Africans saw the woman. Ancient Africans saw the woman.
I think it was good.
Because these days you hear World Women Days, and which is not originating from Africa.
Yeah.
So why are they fond of putting special days for women? This is not coming from African. We don't see that coming from Africa. But now when it comes, then we all hold on it and we celebrate together. I think, our time is up, and next week can we look at that?
Yeah, and what we'll look at is, for example, we say, oh, maybe we'll get a woman president or whatever, but that means we don't know what was going on in antiquity, because you have women who ruled outright.
The whole continent.
Exactly, the land of black people. So some of those, Ahotep the first, Merit Neith, Hatshepsut, Tuosret, Nefertiti, Kent-Kawes the first, Sobek Neferu, Cleopatra the seventh, Cleopatra the first, Amos Nefertari.
These are all female rulers.
Right. Nithikret, Ankes Sempepe, Kent-Kawes, Ni Maatap. So all of these are female rulers. You understand? So sometimes you would have a case where, all right, we're expecting a male to have this role. However, you can have a pass on of authority to the woman. Now, some people think, oh, well, that must have only happened in pre-dynastic times. Of course, the people of Kemet, they didn't say, oh, I'm in pre-dynastic times. They didn't even deal with dynasties. That's a creation from Manetho, who, when the Greeks were coming, they didn't know what was going on. So he had to organize things in a way they could digest. So he said, this is the first dynasty, second dynasty, third dynasty. That's not how.
I think we have a caller on the hello.
Hello, just one last thing. I just read it right now. The idea of next week's program is very lovely. Relating to the woman. Because I think Africans have lost a lot of things relating to how they treat the woman. Because I think one of our greatest problems is what we are doing to our mothers and sisters and our women, where we place them today. In African spirituality, especially from where I come from, we have the duality of God in everything we do. From the Igbo, we say Chineke. Chi is the masculine, and Eke, which is the productive or the reproductive side, or the creative force, is the feminine God or goddess.
Right.
So I will tune in to next week's program. So give thanks for this information. That will definitely keep me connected to yourself.
Please your name. Please your name. Your name.
Chidi.
Chidi. Okay. Chidi from Germany.
Chidi.
And as I said, don't forget to spread
so much.
the listener link so that others will also get to hear this rich information.
Definitely. Thank you so much.
You're,
So long.
you're welcome.
Right. Yeah, so these are the core concepts that we have in African thought and African spirituality. And we really have, once we know them, then we can start to act on them. If we don't even know that they exist, then we say, okay, well, the women, they've always been in the position that they're in right now. When really, once you actually get a good view of the totality of history, then it will give you a sense of, all right, you had, so all of the names that I gave before were from Kemet, but then you have multiple names from what is Kush, what we now know as modern day Ethiopia, Sudan area, where you had also all of these women who ruled outright. And for them, that position of rulership was specifically for women. So the woman can choose a male consort, but she is the ruler. It's not that she's the regent in the place of the ruler. No, she is the ruler, period. So again, these are things that I think it would be very helpful for us to understand so we can get a sense of the balance. And again, it doesn't have to be man is good and woman is evil. And then we say, okay, well, let's do the opposite. Now, woman is good and man is... No, you're still lost if you do this. The idea is complementarity. You understand that this one complements that one, and they are both necessary in order to bring about life and the continuation of life. So, I definitely think that we should deal with that.
Yeah.
Next week. But I think for our time, there were a few other things that came through from the callers, but I think maybe we deal with it next week.
Yeah, but last one that I want you to do for somebody view on Facebook is, let me check it and read it out to you. It says, is there a particular way to pour libation?
Yes, there are structures of how libations are done. Akan has a structure where it goes from ofre to inshira. First ofre, then nenti, which is the reason why, then inshirasre, where you ask for whatever it is that you need, then nome, which is where you curse anyone who wants ill to fall upon you, then you come to Ariya. Again, this is part of the complementary opposites.
Okay.
You understand? Exactly. So it's not let's just curse anyone regardless. It's saying anyone who obi on person media be ye nankasa man ye obi out tuamana nankasa no betum. Right. So all of these things is that's the thing, that it's not a thing of turn the other cheek or whatever. If you do that, you're like stream water flowing towards a desert. You understand? But in the African concept, you wish well for those who want well for you. And then anything else, again, you have this idea, and you find it in various African proverbs, and I'll share a few. Any deru leruta, we mentioned that before. One who throws ashes, the ashes will follow him or her. That when you make poison, some touches your mouth. If you want it to fall on your neighbor, it falls on you. In Kiswahili, say mchimba kisimba huingia mwenyewe, who digs a pit falls into it himself, the exact same thing as the Akan. Mcheza natope humrukia, mud splashes the one who plays with it. So whatever a person does, whether good or bad, returns to him in some way. We talked about that on the planetary level. You understand? So now the seas are rising because of human actions, but we can see this in everything that we do. You can find it in the story of Kun Impu, which is the so-called eloquent peasant, where again he says, a person who mistreats his fellow person will experience his action coming to him. Redress is short, but misfortune is long, and a good deed returns to those who do it. This is the precept. Do to the doer that he or she may also do. Let your tongue speak straight and not go astray. So again, these are ancient African concepts that once we know about it, once we know better, we can do better.
Doc, we're so grateful for today's segment, so rich, and you really came early, so we've been able to cover a lot of things. So we are looking forward to next week, where we have this great topic to discuss: who the woman was in the African and the ancient Africa times, and who the woman must be today. What has gone wrong with the way we men see women, and what are we suffering from, and all that. We'll look at that. So thank you very much for coming to once again to teach us all over the world, black people all over the world.
And in conclusion, what I would like to say is that we're developing, we have now abibitumi.com, which is the new version of Abibitumi Casa. It's our African social education network, right? So we have forums before, now we have a network where, you can do all of the things. You can interact with people, you can invite friends, you can do everything that you can do on those white social networks. So what I'd like for the people who are online to do, and you, is to transition away from using these white platforms. I want the whole and dominar. I want all of them to
Okay.
transition away from all these white things, because we have to ask ourselves why anytime we want to do something to better ourselves as African people, we have to do it on white platforms so that they also get the benefit. Let's try to let the benefits accrue to African people. Just like I said with AFTown, this is me living out what I'm saying. I said I have iTunes, I have AFTown. I'm going to support AFTown. This is what I want these people to do, because if I say all this, I'm wasting wind if at the end of the day, they're still making Mark Zuckerberg a multi-billionaire, trillionaire by supporting his platform. We should support African black-owned platforms. bbtumi.com is one the people who want to be beta testers, they can sign up now. From there, we also have Black Junction. We have Let's Buy Black 365. We have Black Spot. All of these black-owned platforms that we could be on, but we're not on them. So that is the takeaway that I want people to do. Any knowledge that you know, if it doesn't manifest in your behavior and a change in behavior, it's not knowledge. Maybe it's just data. You understand? We have to transition to making changes in our behavior. And that's what I want you to do. So check out bbtumi.com. Brand new African social education network. We have videos. We have everything that you can do there.
Okay.
Check it out, and I'll see you there. And we'll transition away from this thing.
So on bbtumi.com, you can send friend requests.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. You can do everything there. So check it out. I want you to see it. I want you to see everything you can do. We also will have learning courses. So all of our greatest scholars can create courses, and people can take those courses at their own leisure. It's so much going on. There's a shop that we're just getting started with. So we're in the beta stage. We want the people to come on to test everything out. We're still getting feedback, but it's already a full-blown site. And then from there, we're going to transition all of the data. We have over 2 million users only since we've been keeping track. That's since 2011, but we've been in existence since 2006. We have thousands of members. We're going to transition all our existing members to the new bbtumi.com. We're going to transition the store to bbtumi.com. So all the products that we already have on bbtumi Casa are going to be on bbtumi.com. You can also access the exact same new site from both URLs. So now in the future, when you go to bbtumicasa.com, it will take you there. When you go to bbtumi.com, the shorter URL, both will take you to the same place, to the newly designed website. The newly designed app is coming, so keep on the lookout. Big changes are coming to our bbtumi Casa, and we want you to be a part. We have to live out what we say we're about. Exactly. And this is one way you can do that. Instead of being digital and virtual integrationists, digital and virtual house Negroes, we want to be digital and virtual revolutionaries. The easiest way that we can be about black people is just by clicking this button. You understand? I haven't even told you go build a space station right now. I'm saying just press a button on your laptop and on your phone so you can live out being an African revolutionary. So you have to decolonize your device for total African liberation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Obadele Kambon. And that's another great news coming from the camp of bbtumi Casa. Now you can go to bbtumi.com and sign up and learn. So those of you who are listening and want the books, go to bbtumi Casa. I'll just send that to you so that when you go to bbtumi Casa, you can find any of the books that he mentioned and those that he didn't mention. You can get them right there and learn from that. So this is where we are bringing the whole show, today's edition of Good Morning Africa, to an end. And I think I've really learned a lot today, and which has produced a nice topic for next week. And you already know, so share the link to your friends everywhere they are on the planet Earth. You heard somebody calling from Germany, so don't be selfish. Share the links and let others also learn what you are learning. We're going for a musical break, and right after that we'll come and wrap up on the show.